Hey, look, I'm really excited you're out here. I thought this would be a good opportunity to get Dwayne and Larry and myself to answer some of your questions. I think my Ask Me thing is one of my favorite segments of the podcast that we do, because I really care about what you guys think, and I like the sound of my own voice, so I guess I can answer those questions for you. And I don't always get it right, I don't know, but I enjoy it, so I'm looking forward to doing this today. But we did have a question. This one came in anonymously, so I'll just read this one, but we're going to have the guys here give us their questions in real time, but I want to read this one. So here it is. After hearing many of the speakers, connecting with several of the men here at the Forge, and taking the time to reflect, I've decided to land my mission statement on transforming my family tree from one of shame, weakness, scarcity, and embarrassment to one of abundance, pride, strength, and integrity. How do I communicate this to those closest to me, like my wife and kids, without taking away from the sacrifices and good intentions of those before me? As I know they did the best they could with what they had, and that I wouldn't be the man I am today without my parents and grandparents' past experiences. Or do I ever need to communicate this? Should I simply let my actions do the talking? I really like this question. I wanted to share just a quick story, and I'll be as brief as possible. So, my dad died about 8 years ago, and I had a lot of contention and animosity towards him when he died. And I missed seeing him pass away in the hospital by 30 minutes. Literally 30 minutes. I was driving from Utah to California, and my mom called 30 minutes out and said, "Where are you?" And I said, I'll be there in 30 minutes. She said, okay. And I got to the hospital, and I could see the look on her face, and I had a pretty good idea that he had passed away. And I went into his room, and I saw him there, and it was hard to forgive him up until that moment. And in those moments and over the years that have followed, I found a lot of grace for him. And I think, like, whoever wrote this note, he did the best he could with what he had. That's absolutely true. And over the years, I found a lot of grace for how he showed up, but I also see a lot of myself in him. And so even though there might be a family legacy that you're not entirely proud of, I do think that has led you to this event, that has led you to your wife, that has led you to having the kids, and it has led you to want to change your family legacy. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. So I don't think it's at odds to feel contention or frustration or shame around wanting to change that and still honor the fact that maybe the way your family was exactly who you needed them to be, even if they weren't perfect or model family. But I would definitely, the other part of this question, I would say this, I would definitely communicate with my wife and my kids about what wants to change, and I would get them involved in the process. My friend on the Ask Me Anything that I do, Kip Sorensen, often talks a lot about getting commitment versus compliance. Compliance is just getting people to do what you tell them to do, and commitment is getting people to buy in. So if you want your family, your wife, and your kids to be bought in, then you need to sit down with them and say, hey, here's what I want to do, here's what I'm learning, here's how I'd like to show up, but I also want you to be included in this process. What's important to you? What would be important that we start doing as a family? What do we stand for? What are our values? What is our family code or creed? And get them involved in the process. So definitely communicate with them, and I think you can honor the fact that your family wasn't perfect, and maybe that's exactly what you needed. What do you guys want to jump in?
I echo a lot of what Ryan says, and I'll share a story of mine as well, which is I came from a background of not just one negative father figure, but several that came into my life. And one of the things that really tripped me up before I started Dad Edge was I told myself just internally that I am not going to repeat these patterns. And the exact thing that I did was I started repeating those patterns. What we focus on grows, what we focus on expands. I never brought my family into that decision, which meant I really had no one to hold me accountable. And I really didn't even have any public standards, public meaning not just me, but my wife and my 4 boys. And once I brought them into that vision, things started to change. Not every day is perfect. There's still absolutely messy days. But men who come from horrific childhoods, as it relates to a father, or a father figure. Me personally, I was abused horribly as a kid and abandoned by my biological father, not once but twice. And the one thing I told myself is, I'm going to do this differently. But being that example, I think is most important. Bringing your family into it is most important. But here's the final thing that I'll say that might be a little different. People do the best they can with what they have. My own father has told me repeatedly, if there was a Dad Edge Alliance, if there was an Iron Council, if there was something like that, I might have made some very different decisions. And I see that time and time again, where men have a choice. We have a choice. A lot of us think that we are a victim to whatever childhood we had, but we absolutely have a choice. We can either break that pattern, or we can continue it, right? But also the forgiveness piece. People did the best they could with what they had. And one thing I do know, to give all these father figure graces in my life, and there was 5 of them, is that they too came from traumatic backgrounds. My father came from a very traumatic, abused background. And I know he probably did the best he could with what he had. And the good thing about forgiveness is it's not only a gift for the other person, it's a gift for us. It truly is a gift for us. It was once said that not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and hope that they feel it. But unfortunately, the people that don't forgive, we're the only ones that feel that. So forgiveness, I think, is key too.
Awesome. All right, let's go up here. And as you guys go, say your name. If you're comfortable saying your name, because this will go out, but say your name and then share that.
I know. Sure. I'm sorry. Just a little bit added to that. I agree with everything they said, but to boil down to the actual basic original question, would I set my wife and kids down and say, this is my decision and this is why I have made this decision and this is where we're going? It depends on the dynamics of the family, and it depends on how old the child is. If the child is not aware of your bad history, or your father's bad history, or your grandfather's bad history, I would not set a 5-year-old down who's innocent of all that and say, this is all the bad stuff that happened, and this is what we're going to do because of it. I wouldn't do that to a child. I would just lead by example. I would set out, if we're going to set up a code for the family, I'd set up a code for the family. They don't need to know the ugly history of why we need a code for the family. Don't add more ugly burden to your children than they already carry or will have to carry that you don't have any choice in.
My name is Richard. Yesterday we got to hear from Dwayne, and I wanted everyone else to kind of hear it. So the question is, what does it truly mean that humanity was created in the image of God, and how should it shape the way we understand ourselves, others, and our purpose and identity? I also have a second question, and it's for the end of the podcast, if time permits. I'd love to hear your Pedestal again.
I believe in Genesis chapter 2, when the scripture says, God said, let us make man in our image. He's speaking of plurality. Scripture speaks in several other places of a Godhead. Now, people debate and butt heads about Trinity. Is it Trinity? Is it whatever you want to call it? But there is, in other places in Scripture, it says the Father. There are 3 that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these 3 are one. I believe when God said, let us make man in our image, He created man as a Trinity, just like He is. We are a body, a soul, and a spirit. One of the speakers actually touched on this very clear yesterday from another direction, and it's very true. We are a body, a soul, and a spirit, and a lot of what men do today, they'll focus on one part of the Trinity. All right, they'll go to the gym, they'll eat right, they'll get super fit, they'll do jiu-jitsu, they'll run marathons, and they have that body, that physical part of their Trinity, they've got that clipped. But they ignore the spiritual, and they ignore the soul. So they're actually only a third of the man they're supposed to be. Or you've got some men who are all about art and music and fashion. Sorry, Tanner. They're all about that side of stuff, but they never take care of their body. They never take care of their physical. And they sure are never going to explore their relationship with God. They're only a third of the man God intended them to be. Why do we have so many ugly mean, harsh-spirited, arrogant ministers in all areas of faith today, because they have focused on the spiritual and they have ignored the physical and the soul. They don't appreciate art. They don't appreciate poetry. They don't appreciate sculpture. They don't appreciate nature. And they darn sure don't go for a walk and put down that piece of fried chicken. They don't take care of the body. So they're only a third of a man. But if you look in the Bible, God called David. Now think about David. If you know your Bible at all, King David, a man after God's own heart. We said, well, we know what David did with Bathsheba and Uriah and all that, but God said, that's a man after my own heart. David was a great warrior. David was not a little towhead, big-eyed child when he killed Goliath. He was a warrior. And he went out to war with the Philistines. He was a renowned warrior. He was also a poet. He wrote Psalms, some of the most beautiful poetry that humankind has ever written. David wrote it. And he was a man who prayed and wept and sang to God and searched with everything he had for his God. He was deeply, totally, completely sold out to all three parts of who he was. And God said, that is what I pictured and intended for a man to be from the start. That is a man after my heart. So I encourage men to, the soul is the part of you that reacts to the world, to the art, to the music, to nature, to beauty. The spirit is the part that reacts to God, and the physical is the part that reacts to yourself. Find the holes in your Trinity and start showing them.
Excellent. All right, what do we got? Yeah, what do we got?
Hey, I'm Braden, and
You're asking how you can be consistent with the standards you've created? So can I ask, as you've been here in the last 2 or 3 days, are there some things that you want to start doing at home that you maybe haven't been doing before you got here?
devotions and before I go to school every day. So,
You know, when I was, I'm going to see if I can make this apply, but when I was starting a brand new financial planning career, I had this goal that I was just going to make 10 phone calls per day. And I knew, just based on the numbers that I had, that if I just made 10 sales calls per day, then I would hit my sales goals. And I made it a commitment that I never failed, that I would do 10 sales calls per day. And there were certain days where, you know, I was tired and maybe I had a bad day, or maybe, you know, I lost a client or something like that, and I still had 2 or 3 calls I needed to make. But guess what? I didn't go home until those 2 or 3 calls were made. Okay, and so what I did is I had a sheet of paper that I created in Excel, and it had the number of calls that I made every day. So I had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way through Sunday or Friday. And I had 10 check boxes, and then it was how many people I reached and how many meetings that I got from those calls. And I would literally just check them with a pen. Check, 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 check. And I did not do anything to go home until I got those done. So what I would say for you, it's for Braden, right?
yes.
Yeah, so Braden, what I would do for you is I would come up with a checklist and have your dad help you out with this, and write down what I would call the non-negotiables. So working out, scripture study, devotional time, those other things that you want to do, make those non-negotiables, and then Monday through Sunday, and just literally check them off. Because there's something really powerful when you start writing those things down and you check them off, and you see, and then you can start tallying up how many days in a row, and you can make it a game. So at first you got 5 days in a row, now you're 10 days in a row, now you're 30 days. And maybe on day 31 you slip and you mess up and you start over, you're like, cool, can I do better than 30 days? Yeah, I think you can. And you get back on the horse. But systems is what you need, and you can create a really simple system for that.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You guys have anything to add on that?
How old are you?
14.
I just want to commend you for a minute and just say, you know a lot of us at 14 years old, this wasn't even on our radar. But I also wanted to acknowledge something that Dwayne said and what he shared in the last question about the body, the soul, and the spirit. I told him, I spent 3 hours with him yesterday, and that point hit so deeply to me. The only thing that I would add to that is do something for your soul. So you've got the spirit covered with your devotion. You have the body covered with the workouts. The only thing I would add is, and Dwayne used the term Renaissance man, read a book that you wouldn't otherwise read. go look at some art or listen to music that you otherwise wouldn't. Broaden your horizons no matter what your age group is doing, because you will just become a more well-rounded man. That's really the only thing I want to add. But I also, again, just 14 years old, what an incredible question, man.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Joe. So at work, I'm part of a four-man crew. We work pretty much really remotely. The man in charge does not really endorse communication between us and wants us going directly to him. He's set to retire next month, and I'm very interested in creating some communication and team-building practices between the rest of the crew to create some better communication and camaraderie. How do I go ahead and endorse this to guys that don't seem too active or really too social? I'd like to try to use this time to turn over a new leaf within the team.
So you said you're the owner of the organization isn't real keen on that, though, it sounds like.
The chief of the department wants us going directly to him.
And you want to go around that, or you want to get him involved?
No, once he
in stuff?
retires, I want us to be more collaborative.
I don't know that you need to wait, but what I would consider is that he's got a reason for that. It might be ego, right? I mean, that's immediately what goes to mind for me. Control, ego, authority, those types of things. I would try to figure out what it is that he wants. What would be a win for him? Is it, as he steps away, is it increased revenue? Is it more freedom and flexibility with his time? And maybe sit down, depending on the relationship you have with that chief, that supervisor, and really try to get into his world about what would be a win for him. Because if you can do that, then you can start to formulate an idea for how the communication between the departments would actually enhance whatever it is he's after. And the other thing that you might be able to do is kind of ease into this where it's not just communication that you guys are having, invite him into that communication as well. So now maybe he's involved in, it sounds like that expression says
He has said no. I've tried to Zoom with him. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to be, but I don't want to keep calling you up. But
you don't want to what? I'm sorry.
I don't want to keep pushing back. But I've tried this months ago. So can we Zoom like once a week for 15 minutes? He's like, I don't like that. No. He's retiring next month. So I'm like, I'm kind of just waiting him out and trying to grab the other guys after and say, let's start a new thing, guys.
Got it. So that makes sense. So in that case, what I might suggest then is to start having these conversations verbally with the guys, in the same kind of conversation. Hey, what do you guys want out of your career? What would make this a more meaningful work environment? How could we be more successful? How could we make more money? How could we get the project done faster? And start having this communication verbally, where you may not be able to have it professionally, if you will. Because that way, when that time comes in the next month, you've already built some of the foundation and the trust and credibility with these guys. But you might flank a little bit and not talk so much about work and just get more involved in these guys' lives. And that might help transition to something more professional. Did you have something, Dwayne? I thought you had something. Does that help, Joe, at all?
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, what I would say, lean into getting to know them and building up trust and credibility and influence with them. That way, when the time comes, I think that transition will be a lot easier.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it, man.
Hey, I'm Chris. So, what's the line between healthy vulnerability with your spouse and using them as an emotional dumping ground? And how do you recognize that difference?
We talked earlier, right? We don't like the word vulnerable. Am I right? Vulnerable, this is synonymous with weak. Okay. But we talk, women say that they want you to be emotional. They don't. They are not telling the truth. They're not being deliberately deceitful. They're being women. Okay? They don't want you to be emotional. But they do want you to be tender. Emotion, vulnerable emotion is weakness. And you are, or you darn sure better be, your wife's strength. Not just her physical strength, but her spiritual strength and her emotional strength. And so if you keep showing up vulnerable, weak, emotionally, then you're undermining her trust in your strength. And what she thought she wanted, she didn't want. Okay? So, as I suggested to him, when your child asks for a cookie and you give them a sweet potato, all right, with butter and cinnamon on it, you didn't give them what they asked for, but you gave them something that they really like. So when your wife asks for emotional vulnerability, give her tenderness, give her gentleness, give her attention, okay? It still goes a long way, but it doesn't undermine. A strong man who can be tender, all right, that's something pretty special today. And over time, she'll recognize that without you cutting your knees out from under you and showing her all this vulnerability that she really don't want to see. Now I'm not Garp, but that's a rule according to Cowboys, so you guys take it from
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I want you to imagine a scenario. You're a medieval king, and you're in charge of this castle and this fortification, and there's this huge wall around this castle. And as you do, because you want to keep your people protected, you send out workers and you go out and you inspect the wall periodically yourself, because there's warring tribes and villages and kingdoms that want to take what you have. And so you go out and you find in the east side of your kingdom, in your fortification, a vulnerability in the wall, in the truest sense of the word, which is what? A weakness in the wall. There's a structural integrity issue in the wall. And maybe some rocks are falling apart and it's eroding and there's a big gaping hole in that wall. And you decide that you're going to go talk to your wife, your queen. And you say, hey, we found a big hole in the wall and we don't know what to do about it. And there's a tribe that's coming to attack us, a neighboring kingdom that's coming to take what we have. And I just wanted to let you know, there's nothing we can do about it. And that wall's there, and I just want to brace you for what's about to happen. Is that going to foster trust with your wife, or is that going to scare the daylights out of her and undermine who you are as a king of your castle? Undermine, right? Now let me give you a different scenario. Same scenario, different way of handling it. Hey, I want to let you know, we found a vulnerability in the wall. It's eroding, there's a big hole, but I've got the blacksmiths on it. I've got the masons building bricks. We're going to go in, we're going to fortify that. In the meantime, we're going to put extra guard there to protect that area, and we're going to make sure that whatever happens, it's protected until we're able to shore that back up. That's going to foster trust, because she's going to recognize that you know what's going on, that you're aware of what's happening in your kingdom, and that you're willing to do something about it. So how that translates into your life is that when you have a bad day at work, or maybe you lost a big client, or revenue dips, or you're being sued, or you got in a car accident, or any number of things that could happen, she wants to know that you're aware of what's going on in your universe and also giving her a plan of what you're going to do about it. And that's what most men miss, is they think because of the way vulnerability is used, that they just need to come dump all of their weight and baggage onto their wife. That's not her responsibility, that's yours. Hers is to make things beautiful and lovely. Yours is to make sure that things are protected and cared for. And so you come with a plan and you say, hey babe, you know what, I'll let you know. Rough day at the office today, but I've got a plan and here's what I'm gonna do, and I wanted to let you know. If I seem a little off, that's what's going on, but it'll be fine tomorrow, and I'm gonna make sure it is. That to me is the difference. That's a much more effective way to talk with your wife about what's going on in your world.
I'd like to make one other comment on that, and I'll be fast. I've gone to the other extreme of this, where I don't bring my wife into anything, and she takes that as complete, total disconnect. Because then they start to tell themselves a story about what's going on. It almost cost me my marriage 10 years ago. And in my mind, I was being protective, and in her mind, I was being disconnected. This might not work for everybody, but it works for us. It's a lever that I pull, and I don't do it very often. But my wife and I call it shitty first draft emotions. And basically what that means is it's not me being emotional, it's me getting clarity through just expressing some thoughts around it. And also what Ryan said is adding in those solutions as well. So sometimes there are so many ping pong balls in a man's brain, right, of the things that we're facing, the things we're battling. My wife is actually wired pretty darn well for this. So part of our relationship, I do it a lot less than she does, but every now and again, I'd say probably once or twice a season, hey, I have some shitty first draft emotions for you. And then it's just really me talking out loud in the same tonality that I'm talking to you right now. I'm not up, I'm not down, I'm not crying, I'm not anything like that. It's me literally talking out loud. My wife, you know, if we were playing like verbal tennis, she's really good at like taking those thoughts and then bringing them back, and we get clarity together. But that is something that does work for us.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Matt. My question involves my wife. There are times when she is offended or hurt relationally, not by me, and she comes to me and talks to me about it. And I tend to not think it's a big deal, or I can see the other person's perspective. And it makes her feel that I am not on her side. So how can I, when I think she might be wrong, show her a different perspective while still showing that I am on her side? And also, how can I be a fierce protector of her relationally and emotionally?
It's a great question. I'd love to take that one. So don't do what I did when I first got married. That's not that big of a deal. Why are you so upset?
Calm down.
You're fine. That's exactly what not to do. So I definitely made those mistakes. You know, Chris Voss, he used to be the chief hostage negotiator for the FBI. And I love his book, Never Split the Difference. But he's got this term that I think is really masculine, and I love it. It's called tactical empathy. Empathy, and Chris talks about empathy. Empathy does not mean agreement. It does not mean agreement, right? And empathy is very different than sympathy. Sympathy is like, I'm so sorry that happened to you, where the person is up here and the person who's having the problem is down here. It's kind of like if somebody passes away, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And the person who's experiencing that loss, it kind of feels crappy. But empathy is different. Empathy is like, I understand. If I was in your situation, I'd probably feel the same way. If I disagree with my wife, what I'll do, and a lot of the guys in the Alliance know our skill around what's called generative questions, right? Which is, I'll ask her a question of like, so if it's relational within like the friend group or something like that, I would just be like, hey Jess, just out of curiosity, how do you think Jill is perceiving this? Because how people operate makes total sense to them. It might not make sense to us, but it makes total sense to them. And instead of me doing more telling, we have to sit down and listen, but I'll ask a question just to get her to think about the perspective just a little different. Just a quick story that this just happened. My wife had a friend whose dad died, and she wasn't close to her. And she's like, I don't really think I should go to the funeral. I was like, tell me about that. She's like, well, I didn't know her dad. And I was like, yeah, I get that. I was like, I asked permission. I said, hey, do you mind if I give you a perspective on this? And I'm going to put this in my words. She's like, yeah. I said, I did the same thing about 20 years ago to a friend of mine. His dad died. And he gave me a really good talking to that I needed to hear, and I'll never forget it. He sat me down and he said, why didn't you come to my dad's funeral? And this was, again, like 20 years ago. And I said, I'm sorry, man, I didn't really know your dad. And he goes, Larry, let me tell you something. The funeral is not for the person who passed away. It's for the people who are living through it. And I shared that with my wife, and she welcomed that, and she went to the funeral. So I think there are different ways you can do it. Sometimes you can ask permission, ask a better question to get them thinking differently, but also, most importantly, validating their feelings. You don't have to agree with it, but you can validate and understand why they might be feeling what they're feeling.
The other thing I would add to that is, you mentioned briefly in the beginning, to you it's not that big a deal sometimes. That's one of the things we have to understand. We have to learn to see things at the level of importance it is for them, whoever we're talking to. Now, if the young man who spoke a little bit ago looked like about 14, okay? Now, if he came to me at 14 and there was a girl in school that he was really sweet on, and he asked her to the prom, and she said no, and he's like, he would be thoroughly heartbroken. I mean, just crushed. And so internally for me, at 60 years old, all I've been through, I'm thinking, son, you just wait. You just wait what the world has waiting for you ahead. But what I need to do is I need to say, I need to see this as if I was his age and when I went through this. So when the wife comes in and she's got this something to her that's really big, we can't look at it as we would look at it, as what it would mean to us. You know, if you've got a baby and that baby's learning to walk and he's tottering across the kitchen floor and wobbling in a diaper, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, 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 and he sits down hard on his butt. Well, he starts crying and screaming like this is the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to him in his life. And it is to him. And so I have to see it, and I have to understand it, and I have to approach him as he sees that from where he is in life. Not like, boy, get up. You know how many broken bones I've had? You know how many times I've been bucked off a horse? Do you know how many plates and screws I got? You think that ain't nothing. Get up. What are you doing? We don't do that. Well, it's like that with everybody in life. Wherever they're coming from with their experience, that's what they're feeling. And we have to let them feel that based on where they are. We can't deny them the right to feel that based on where we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, there's one other thing, is if she can't trust you on what you think are the little things, she's not going to come to you with what you think are the big things. And I can't tell you how many times I talk with guys, and this happens as well, when men experience divorce and the woman initiates it, on average, it's that woman has been thinking about that for 2+ years. And what that tells me, and what should tell all of us, is that she's afraid to talk with you about it for some reason. Because too often we minimize what she's been telling us all along, and we misinterpret it or misread it or downplay it. And then she comes and says, I want a divorce. And we're like, oh, I can't believe it, I was blindsided. That's what I said. Until I had some hindsight and realized, oh yeah, I wasn't blindsided. I just missed everything. So take care of those little things, the little things that you think are little, take care of those, treat those gently, as Dwayne said, because those big things will come into factor as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jason, and I was wondering from your experience, all three of you guys, what approaches have proven most effective for avoiding the tendency to measure yourself against an ideal instead of staying focused on your progress relative to your past self?
You're talking about like the comparison trap. Here's my thought. I actually don't think it's really all that bad. Let me rephrase that. I think there's an opportunity for positive comparison. And not a lot of people talk about this. Everybody says, oh, don't compare yourself to other people. Why? Other people show you what's possible. Remember when I was little, I'd watch football players, and one of my childhood heroes was Nolan Ryan. And I'd go out there and I'd practice my pitches, and I wanted to throw 100 miles an hour and throw 7 no-hitters and do all the things that he did. That's healthy. And then I have friends, like Kip and Tanner and all these guys here, that I look at what they're doing and it's inspiring to me. And I compare my current situation to what they're doing. And I look at Kip as a father. I compare my fatherhood skills to Kip's because I aspire to be more like Kip. And that's not unhealthy. That's the healthiest thing that a man can do. And that's why brotherhood is so important, so we can begin to see what's possible. But there is a trap. It's not exclusively a good thing. It's when it demoralizes us. So if I was comparing myself to Kip, and I was like, man, instead of being aspirational, like I can do this, and I can do that, and I can work on this, and I can be more present, and I can do all these things, I started thinking, man, I'm a horrible father. I'll never be like Kip. I'll never be able to have that relationship with my kids. I just don't have what he has. You see the difference? So if you start to feel yourself going down that lane of self-deprecation and feeling bad for yourself and playing the victim card, then you know that comparison is no longer healthy. And I've had to have situations in my life where I just have limited contact with those comparisons because it doesn't work for me. Or I've had to cut certain things off because it puts me in a bad spiraling mood. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with comparison. It's just a matter of whether it fuels you or it hinders you.
I agree with everything that Ryan said. Whatever
I agree with whatever Ryan said. I don't know what he said.
But I do think the only thing I would add to that is the lens that you choose to view that person through. So, like for instance, I live in St. Louis, right? I live in the same town as Andy Frisella, right? Which is founder of First Form. He's got an arsenal of exotic cars in his garage. I don't, right? There's a part of me, now obviously when I look at that, I'm like, man, that's pretty cool that he can do that well in business, right? But also, if we only look at that person through one dimension, that one thing, that's the one thing that we're gonna see, and that's where I think Ryan can get it can be demoralizing. Versus looking at your own life through acknowledgement, appreciation, and gratitude. So I might not have a Lamborghini in the garage. I don't need one. But I have a wife that loves me more than anything. I have 4 healthy boys that I get to come home to right now. Right? We get to eat dinner together as a family, right? There are people in the world that while they might have one thing that they're insanely good at. I mean, think of pro athletes that we know. Right? They were really, really good at whatever they were doing at their craft, but the rest of their life was in shambles. Last year we had an incredible testimonial who opened up for us last year, which was Daryl Strawberry. And he was so open. I mean, I grew up watching Daryl Strawberry, right? Right, Patrick? And you look at people like that and you're like, they never have a bad day. They have all of these things. But Daryl was extremely forthcoming with how messy the rest of his life really was. And the things that we take for granted, and if we're looking at that person like, well, they're an all-star athlete, there might be other things going on that we don't know, right? And it's then looking into what you do have and also really appreciating that too. But that's a really great question. Thank you for that.
There's one other quick thing that I've found useful for me is when you see somebody who has something that you aspire to have or be like, instead of being so fixated on what they have or how, like why they're in that position or what they must have done, like, people will do that too, right? They'll villainize people. Oh, he must have cheated somebody or he must have just got lucky. And they'll start to diminish how that person has success in that aspect of their life. Instead of getting so fixated on that, get fixated on how they did it. Like if you want to be like Andy Frisella, stop comparing yourself to Andy Frisella and start asking, how did he do that? Like, how did he figure that out? If you want to be a better father and you see somebody who has a great relationship with their kids, don't be envious of that. Be curious about it. What's he doing? What kind of conversations are they having? What type of activities are they engaged in? What kind of memories are they making? And when you start getting more curious, then I think you'll start to naturally be in a healthier place of comparison that'll serve you better.
All right, thank you.
Hey, my name's Philip. My question is, how do you find the balance between analyzing and action? I tend to overanalyze a lot. Sometimes I think I can just read and think my way to success. And I know, Ryan, you talk about being too much of a doer. Just no forethought, just go do it. And then you leave a wake of collateral damage in your path. Is there a way to find a balance between analyzing and action?
We don't know. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone's like, I don't know. Look, I think, is it Stephen Covey who says start with the end in mind? Start with the end in mind, right? And so there's two opposite ends of the spectrum on this. There's the overthinkers and the overdoers. And you might be more on the spectrum of overthinker, right? I might be on the spectrum of overdoer. And so an overthinker will want everything perfect. And what you need to start doing is you need to start surrounding yourself with people that it isn't really that comfortable with, and those are the people who are more like overdoers. Because then you can start seeing it through their lens, and they're going to push you into really uncomfortable places, which means launching things that aren't quite 100%. Right? So if you spent more time engaged with people who are overdoers, you would gradually move where you are on that spectrum. Now, me, on the other hand, whereas I'm naturally an overdoer, and like you said, if it feels good, I'm doing it. And I'll figure out all the details later. And the guys who've been around me for any amount of time know that to be 100% true. It's really, really effective until it's not so effective, and it ends up costing me a lot of time or money or energy or relationships because I didn't think about how my actions would affect all of that other stuff. So I need to spend more time around overthinkers so I can start to see, oh, I didn't consider that perspective. I hadn't thought about that. That wasn't something that ran through my mind. And so wherever you are, let me ask you this. How many of you guys would say you're an overthinker, just by show of hands? Overthinkers. That's like 80+%. Overdoers, how many overdoers? A lot less. It's good to know that about yourself. The more you can know about yourself, then you can start to fill in the holes with people that can help you get to a better place. And so this is why brotherhood's going to be so important for you. So what I would do is I would spend time with the 20% of guys who are those action takers and start getting curious about what they're doing to push themselves forward. Start with the end in mind, get yourself around people who aren't like you, but still headed in the same direction. This is one conversation we talk a lot about too. Diversity isn't inherently strong, right? If I get on a rowboat with these three, with us three, and each of us have an oar, and we're all rowing in the opposite directions, we could say that's diverse, but none of us are going to get anywhere. But if we're all rowing maybe in a different way of rowing, but we're rowing in the same direction, eventually we'll get to where we're going. So align yourself with people who are going where you're going, but have a different personality than you, and that'll help round out some of the things that might be not only characteristics that are good for you, but character deficiencies as well. Hello?
Thanks.
Awesome. Ben.
Thank you for taking my question, Phil. I'm Adrian. This morning, as I was meditating, first of all, this has been such a wonderful collection of information and with such great overlaps between speakers. As I've been taking this all in and further refine my identity and character and doubling down on truly what that is and refining my systems and my vision, and building those systems. One of the struggles that I've been having in doing so over the past many months has been, in 2 Timothy it talks about, in the Bible it talks about, be ready in season and out of season. In that context, in season when all is going well, when I feel the grace of God in His hand in all that I'm doing, touching things, the provision is there, the servitude is there, and I just feel that all those things are going right. But when I'm out of season, and the systems that I've employed are no longer bearing the fruit, how long do I work within that season, within those systems, before I go, all right, time to rewrite the script, time to modify the system? And what are some of those tools that you might recommend employing to do so?
Do you read Shakespeare?
No.
No. I'm not going to try to quote it. There's a Shakespeare where he talks about there's a time and tide. And when the tide is right and the man is prepared for the tide, and then the timing of the tide comes in, then the ship can sail. So if you think about it, you take a giant merchant ship back in that day, and they're tied up to the dock. These ships are huge and they're incredibly heavy, and they cannot sail until the tide is perfectly right. But if the tide is perfectly right, but the captain has not had the ship provisioned and laden and had sailors on it, has it manned, if he hasn't gone through the labor that looks like it's not doing anything. So basically there's a time in life where we prepare for when the magic happens. We don't wait until the magic happens to prepare for the magic. And sometimes if we have done all we can to prepare for the magic, then we just wait for the right timing. And when God's timing comes in, we've done our part beforehand. And back then, they would sit there on the dock, they had to be waiting, they had to be ready, and it would be days, it'd be weeks. The ship is provisioned, the crew is here, everything's here, but the tide hasn't risen yet. But when the tide rises, all right, everybody on board, it's time to go. So they did the systems beforehand, but then it took the patience to wait for the things that were out of their hand to come into place and for everything to line up. Then for there to be success in their endeavor. Sometimes when things fail, it's not, the systems didn't fail. All right, sometimes it's not good timing. When I started this Dry Creek Rental School, I tried to start it several years ago, and it failed miserably. There was nothing wrong with the system. What was wrong was I wasn't ready. I wasn't mature enough. I didn't have enough knowledge. My horsemanship was not near what I thought it was. My temper was terrible. My business sense was way worse than it is now, and right now it's abysmal. It would have been an absolute disaster. I had the systems in place, but the tide had not come in yet. And then when the tide came in and I was ready, we launched the school, and school did great. So sometimes it's easy to blame the systems, but sometimes it's just the timing's not ready yet. Just be prepared and wait for the stars to align.
Thank you for the question. In the Alliance, we go through skills and drills, and I like simple things, very simple things. We do this thing, and a lot of my guys here they'll be familiar with it. It's called start, stop, keep. And we do this in our family on a monthly basis. We analyze what we're doing, and we ask ourselves 3 questions. What do we need to stop doing that isn't serving us anymore? I mean, if you think about it in your business, I know Ryan's business has changed, mine has too. We can't use the same systems or operations we did 10 years ago like we did. So what do we need to stop doing that isn't serving us? What do we need to start doing that will serve us, that maybe we don't know about? Let's explore that. And then the third question is, what do we need to keep doing that is absolutely serving us and that we cannot live without? I know that sounds oversimplified, but like I said, I love simplicity.
And by the way, guys, if you ask a question or you hear a question, we're still together for another day and a half or so. These are good conversations to have over dinner. So if you know you got an answer or you got some solutions and insight, please get together and talk about these things throughout the rest of the event. The only other thing I'd add is if you have a coach or a mentor that's gone before you, then they can tell you, hey, what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing that anymore. Or hey, what you're doing is right, but it's just going to take a lot of time. That's why like a good coach with fitness, for example, you'll work with a coach who's worked with thousands of guys, and you might not experience the results that you want to see right away. But a good fitness coach is going to say, hey, you know what? We need to tweak your training schedule a little bit. Or he might say, no, it's good. It's just going to take 60 days to start experiencing what you want to experience. And a good coach will keep you in the game when you're doing the right things without experiencing the results yet. So make sure you get coaches.
Yeah, great. Thank you, guys.
Hi, I'm John. I think a good partner in a good marriage can be like having a superpower. So I want to make sure I'm maximizing, right? So you wouldn't want to use a superpower if they didn't get their hands on one. So what attribute of a marriage do you think is the most important to really lean into to grow as a man and a husband and a father? And how would you go about leaning into that to kind of get out of the comfort zone and continue to grow?
So marriage is something that I've really dove into over the past 10 years because, like I said, I almost lost mine 10 years ago. And when it comes to those aspects, I think a lot of us, I know I was totally confused of what is my role? Because the world will tell us one thing, our friends will tell us another. We look at how our parents operated, that will tell us something else because that was an example that we had as well, and it could have been a good or a bad. But I think the simplest way, thank you for the question. This is a big question, and a lot of my guys who are here know that that's a deep question, and that's more of a conversation. But Here's what I'll tell you that works for my wife and I just want to answer this in the simplest way, is that my wife and I are married first and we're parents second. Now, that doesn't mean that our kids are not a priority. They absolutely are a priority. You know, if something's going wrong, it's not like, sorry, that's going wrong, me and mom have a date night, peace, right? However, my wife and I view our relationship as the foundation of the house. Period. Full stop. If we crumble, our view is the family suffers for that. And what I think a lot of men do and a lot of women do is once we start having kids, that frying pan that's on the front burner, which is called our marriage, that gets slid back to the back burner, right? And we put the kids on that front burner and we forget about that back burner. And it actually never, a lot of times, never gets moved, to the front again. My wife and I have a date every Friday, non-negotiable. I actually take a half a day off work on a Friday for that date, and I could probably get 10 to 20 burning things done that I need to get done that are going to hang over my head over the weekend. But that is something that we are both committed to, is making sure that we are a married couple. We are not just mom and dad. And we're not, my wife and I also talk about, we don't spin in different orbits. Meaning, she's living her life and I'm living mine. And we can detect that usually very quickly, but that wasn't always so. Everything I'm telling you, we fell on our face on over and over. We were both terrible at it. I was worse. Thank God I'm married to a patient woman. But we truly value each other in 4 different ways. Number one, we're individuals. She is an individual, I'm an individual. So we both honor each other as individuals, right? We each have different things that we do. We have things in common. We also have a partnership. And the partnership is where a lot of couples get stuck. In our family and in our community, we call it the partnership loop. That's the chores, the roles, the bills, the kids stuff, the activities, the homework. That's the stuff we spend. Those are more transactional conversations, right? But they're logistical and they're necessary, but a lot of people just get stuck there. The third level is friendship. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us lose the friendship with our wives. I wrote my wife a letter before the morning got started today, and one of the things I told her in that letter, and she knows this, we've been together for 30 years, she is my best friend, I am her best friend. And that friendship is so important. And then the fourth aspect is the physical, the sexual, that part of our relationship, because that is one of the things but the main thing that separates us from being friends and co-parents is that. And so sex to us, intimacy to us is extremely important. It's a non-negotiable. Sometimes it's even like whether we feel like it or not, that's usually hurt on me, but whether we feel like it or not, we do it, right? I mean, just because that is important. But I know that I would actually love to have a deeper conversation with you and find out more.
Thank you.
I think I can add something to that. And I'm not married. I was married for 18 years, and I think when I look back at my marriage, the best times during that relationship were when we knew each other. And when it fell apart, we didn't really know each other. And the only way to know somebody is to have conversations with them. The answer is communication. I mean, that's what it is. It's asking questions. It's getting to know her. It's asking serious, deep questions like, what are your goals? What are your fears? What do you love most about this relationship? When you feel most loved, what is it that I'm doing? I feel most loved when you're doing this. And it's crazy questions. Maybe it's intimate questions about what's your favorite position, or what would you like to try that we've never tried in the bedroom. But asking all of those questions and setting aside, to your point about date night, setting aside designated time where you can actually do that. You have kids?
Yeah, 4 and 5.
Yeah, so 4 and 5-year-old? Yeah, so it's tough to do that. It's tough to be able to communicate with your wife because your kids are hanging on your knee and they need to be fed and they need to be not bored and all the other things that go with it. But if you set aside that time and you just find ways to communicate with her, serious stuff, silly stuff, and everything in between, you're gonna know each other, and that's part of what fell apart in my marriage. So I'd say communication, huge.
Thank you.
Jerry Lowe here, long time listener, first time caller. What are some suggestions that you might have on how a man could address to the courts any narcissistic, legal abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse that's done by a spouse going through potentially going through the divorce system or even a separation? Because sometimes it feels like the court is stacked up against us men, and that is something that we could battle or easily just give up because it might be too much of a hurdle to climb.
When you ask that question, are you talking about you personally addressing grievances, or are you talking about advocacy for those issues broadly?
More right now, advocacy to the issues broadly. I know how I handled it, and it was very detrimental, and I almost gave up several times. But I'm trying to almost create a movement as well for other men to have those answers when they come up on this.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you said that, because that's where my mind immediately goes, is that you had a situation. Here's what's interesting is just about every day I get people who will reach out to me and they say, hey Ryan, you should do this, you should do that, you should try this, you should do that. If that's an important issue, why are you telling me I should do it? Now I realize most people are a fan of what we do when they say that, and they want us to grow and everything else. But if you have something that's in your heart, then you should do that, and that's what you're doing right now. What I would do is, right off the bat, and I'll get really tactical with you, I get into Facebook groups, single dad Facebook groups, and I create my own Facebook group, and I'd start building advocacy networks for guys who've gone through similar things. I'd create chapters, I'd have meetings, I'd get attorneys involved in those groups, I'd get legislators involved, I'd get elected to political positions within my community and state, so you can start enacting some of these changes that need to take place. But the first thing is to start rallying men around a common cause. And we have access to it's incredible. I can go on Facebook right now and say, hey, single dad group, and I could pull up a dozen or more in my area who are facing the issues that you're facing, single fathers. And you can start talking about this in a way that resonates with other men who have experienced what you've experienced, and then find a way to get them together through a common cause. That's how I would start something like that.
Without the tactics involved in just doing that, starting that little movement, is there any suggestions you would have to anybody going through it right now in the absence of that movement?
I think what you need to do is find that support. I do, because and I've had personal conversations with a handful of guys here that are in similar situations over the weekend, and you need to be around those people. And maybe you don't necessarily need to start a movement, so to speak, but you can go talk with those guys about what you're dealing with, and you can get them to talk with you about what you're dealing with, because you're going to lean on each other. You're going to be able to have the conversations that a lot of people just won't understand. And when Larry was talking about empathy, you need a guy in your corner who's like, yeah, bro, I know how that feels. I actually have this situation going. And you might not even need to have the solution to that, but just knowing that you have a brother that's maybe alienated from his children, or the court system, or or finances being weaponized against you. I don't know your situation, but you're going to have other guys that are experiencing that. So you need to go out and you need to be proactive in finding other men in that situation who are already talking about it. And I promise you, those groups already exist. I know they do. Does that help? Absolutely. Awesome. Cool.
Hi, I'm Bill. My question is, how do you deal with and respond to the fallout from the pain and trauma caused prior to and during your growth journey?
How do you deal with the trauma? I'm just making sure I understand the question of what you were before the growth journey. The past is the past. It's easier to say, but walk away. Nothing will destroy the man you are today faster than the man you were yesterday. That man doesn't exist anymore. Those situations don't exist anymore. So just leave it. And I'm not being flippant. It's easy to say that, but I'm speaking from experience. Don't let yourself drag yourself down from someone that you used to be. And don't let anybody else drag the you that you are today down based on the you that you used to be yesterday. Look to the future, look to today, stop looking at the past. It's oversimplified, but man, the biggest truths in life are simple.
You're familiar with the repentance process, I'm assuming, right? Part of the repentance process is to make amends where you can, just part of it. And I have a philosophy when I do somebody wrong, if I can, I do what I need to do, but I apologize once. Once. That's my boundary. I don't over-apologize, I don't re-apologize, I don't bring up old wounds. If something needs to be addressed and I did something, you know, maybe it's to my wife or what, I will recognize that, I will acknowledge that, I'll acknowledge how I was in the past, and I will apologize to that person one time, and then that I can now wash my hands from. So it is part of the repentance process to acknowledge it and make amends where you can, and I think when you do that, you can begin to let go a little bit more. But again, I'd have the one apology rule in place, otherwise you'll just be saying sorry forever, and that's not going to serve you at all.
You have 5 kids, I know you well. Your kids do something wrong. How easy is it for you to forgive them?
Pretty easy.
There you go. And that's you too. That's it.
Guys, just for sake of time, no more, well, we're going to take you 4 that are in line right now, but no more after that, okay? And we'll make sure we get your guys' questions answered.
Hi, I'm Joe Hicken. I have 3 boys and 1 daughter. She was the last one, and noticed at a young age she's a lot different. She's very strong-willed, she's determined, and very confrontational at 6. So, just had a question, what would you do in raising your daughter, if you have a daughter, or what did you do, Dwayne, in making her the strong, healthy, independent woman she hopefully will become, you know?
Don't do what I did. Okay. I did not, I had 3 younger sisters. I did not understand girls. They were weird. And I got married and I didn't understand my wife. She was weird. And then I had 4 daughters and that they're all weird. You know, so I raised the boys. This is wrong.
I noticed.
Okay, so I raised the boys, and I told my wife, I said, the girls are yours. All right, that's your tribe. You guys are all weird. Just speak your weirdness together. Not good. Okay, I'm not recommending that. I will say this. Okay, if your daughter does not get the love and the affirmation from you that she needs, she'll get it from somebody else. She's got to have it. It's wired in her. And so if you don't give it to her, now they had a wonderful mother, and she did a wonderful job. And my girls, they turned out wonderfully. But that is the one thing I regret. I did not move over into this sphere, their sphere, more often. And I have a hard time now. My daughters are grown, they have babies, they have children of their own, and there's no breach between us, but there's a wall. There's a plexiglass wall that we just can't seem to hear each other through, and that's on me. Okay, embrace your weirdness. That's what makes women so interesting and so exciting and so fun, is that they're weird. And your daughter's weird. I don't even know her. But if she's a 6-year-old girl, she's freaky weird. Because they are. All right? Embrace it. Enjoy it. Your 3 sons together, combined, are going to be easier to raise than that one little girl. But it's worth it. Because they're magic. So embrace the magic. Enjoy the magic. And just love the heck out of her. And it'll be all right.
Thank you.
There's a good book that I read a couple of years ago, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. A lot of you guys have probably read that book, so I definitely suggest that book. There's actually some really interesting research by Dr. Warren Farrell, and he talks about the importance of a man in a young girl's life. And and I'm paraphrasing some of this, but it's interesting that how important a father figure is into a daughter's life, because she gets the attention of a man without it being sexualized. And the path of least resistance for a woman to get attention is through sexual energy. But if she can learn that there's men out there that will give her attention and pour into her and love her respectfully without it having to be sexually driven, they are going to be less likely to engage in premarital sex, premature, early pregnancy, and these types of things. So know how important your role is and read that book and, well, pour into her, embrace it. It's weird. It's interesting to me because we as men sometimes say, well, I don't understand women. Right, we're not supposed to. Because if we did, then what would be the point of the relationship with a woman? There wouldn't be much of a point. She's to teach you things as you're to teach her things. But if you understood each other, there'd be nothing to learn.
Thank you.
Alright. I will soon have a 5-year-old boy and an 8-year-old daughter. I have come to find out that I'm an incredibly reactive parent, especially when it comes to chores. I was listening to some stuff on Monday and realized that that's not the way. That's always what's been patterned, modeled to me. Anyways, my question is, how do I transform or transition from that enforcer role to the leader role, and how do I build the patience that they will, in the belief that they will get their chores done.
Thank you so much for the question. I feel you. That's one of my kryptonites. I'm working on that myself. I'd love to have a deeper conversation with you later about this, to get really specific, but I'll tell you some things that did not work for me and that does now. First of all, I have 4 boys, that's why I couldn't answer the last question. My wife jokes that she's surrounded by 10 balls, so I can't do the girl thing, but one of the biggest annoyances that I have is when my kids are not doing what they're supposed to do, especially their chores. But here's the thing. I used to think, and I look back on this and I'm like, man, you were so dumb. Like, you don't run your business like this. Why would you run your family like this? My kids didn't know what their jobs really were, right? And they're also kids. So like, meaning they're younger. And if you really look at the psychology of a kid, they can only take in like 2 or 3 things at a time. So if you say 5 things to them, I need you to go do these 5 things, they're probably gonna remember 2. And they're also gonna probably not do those things incredibly well unless they're taught or unless they have the example. So every single young man in my house now has a role, jobs, I should say. They know exactly what they are supposed to do. They know when they're supposed to do it. And most importantly, and this is where I missed it big time, what does good actually look like? Because we are all kids. I mean, go clean your room, you take all your stuff, you shove it under your bed, you take all the dirty laundry, you put it back in the drawers, it's a mess, right? What I've also found is being calm and specific. So I'll give you an example. 3 weeks ago, I went haywire on my 10-year-old. I told him, I was like, go clean your room. And he's still trying to, he gets it, but he doesn't, he's still learning. But I go in there and, it's not a clean room, right? It's 10-year-old clean, but it's not clean. So I yelled at him. And then went back in there, still wasn't done right. And my wife was like, do you think he really understands what clean room means? And I kind of looked back and I was like, I never really actually we never went in there, cleaned his room, or he did. We took a picture of it and said, hey, this is what good looks like, right? So just to put it in our world, right? I used to be in the health industry, used to work with surgeons and doctors, and imagine going to the doctor and they're looking at your blood work and they're like, hey, Colton, yeah, I need you to get healthier. Be like, well, what's wrong? I just need you to get healthier. Just get better health. Well, is it my cholesterol? Do I have diabetes? Do I have cancer? What do I have? No, just get healthier. We're so general with our kids. Go clean your room. What does that actually look like? Specificity, right? And the other thing too is when they're consistent with it, we praise them for it, right? Not reward them. That's their job. But hey, job well done. This is what a clean room should look like. Good job, right? So just specificity. But trust me, man, I get you. It's infuriating. Yeah, I get it.
I would double down on what he said. You got to take emotion out of the equation. If they did not do the chore, which is what I heard at the beginning of your question, the children aren't doing the chores, okay, that needs to be dealt with. Emotion is not part of that equation. Okay, it weakens you in their eyes, and it weakens your ability to deal with this in a logical, reasonable, wise manner, and this becomes an issue. And so my thing from hard-won experience is the number one thing to keep in mind. Everything he said, I agree with 100%. But I would put a gold star beside the point. Emotion has no place in the equation. It's just simple justice and teaching and learning and growth. But it's not a punitive emotional issue, or then it becomes something else.
Thank you.
I'm Gavin. I've got a 20-year-old daughter, and when she was in high school, I made some mistakes. I thought that I needed to protect her by controlling her and everything around her, right? And it led to not seeing her from age 15 to 16, or 15 to 17. We never talked, and I didn't see her until she was 18. It tears me apart, right? We're working on that now, it's getting better, but you guys have all raised young men who have gone up through high school, some more recently than others. But I've got two boys here who are about to enter high school. Next year they'll be freshmen. And I'm scared to death, right? Not because only of their actions, but all the things around them. There's so much garbage out there that they almost don't even have to try. You know, all they have to do is get in the wrong circles, get with the wrong people, end up in the wrong photograph that ends up on the internet, stuff like that. So I guess my question is kind of one of hindsight. If you were to think back to when your boys started high school, what do you wish you would have done better or differently, or more specifically to help prepare them and to support them through high school? And then I'd love if you had a few words of advice for them for some things that they can do to make sure they succeed.
Yeah, I've got a thought on this. My oldest, Brecken, he's 18, he's about to graduate. He's so easy because he's basically me. I mean, even if we get into an argument, I'll say something in, he'll say something back, and I'm like, that's a good point, I would have said that. And so it's like, even when we argue, it's like he's the same. So it's so easy to go hunting with him and understand what he's excited about and have conversations. And my second was a lot harder, because we're a lot different. I remember asking him a couple of years ago, I said, hey, bud, do you want to go hunt with me? He's like, no, I don't want to go hunting. I'm like, what? Why? He's like, I don't like being cold, I don't like being tired, and I don't like being bored. I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good reason not to want to go hunting, because you're definitely going to be all three of those things. But it's taken the last, I would say, 2 years for us to formulate a conversation, like a more deep relationship, where he actually will text me about things that he's into. Because before, he would say things to me, but I would kind of brush it off or not pay attention. And so guess what? He stopped sharing things with me because it wasn't important to me. That was the question earlier. I can't remember who asked it about, is it important to you or is it important to them? And when I finally started to get myself into his world, which is he likes sneakers and he likes cars and he likes fashion, he likes different things in me. But when I got excited about that and entered his world, I was able to build up the trust with him. So he'll message me things that still aren't something that I'm particularly interested in, but I'm interested in him. And so when we start getting interested in the people that we love and care about, then we start to have some of that ability for influence with them. I wish I would have done that earlier with him. And I'm seeing that now with my daughter, which is even more difficult because even feet are weird, right? Yeah, exactly. And my youngest, you know, again, he's kind of like his oldest, so that one's easy. But the two middle ones, those are rough, man. But the more I got involved with that, the better I was off in building that trust with him. And to the boys, where are you guys at? I saw you a second ago. There you go. Yeah, to the boys. I just want you to know, like, sometimes I remember when I was your guys' age and I looked at my dad and I saw all the flaws. I saw all the things that were wrong, like all the things he did wrong, what he could have done better, how he could have showed up, how he could have done this or that. And then as I got older, I started to see the human. And there's different stages of life that we have with our fathers. So the first stage is we have this pedestalization where we put them up on a pedestal and we think they're heroes. And then we have this stage which is villainization, where we start to villainize. Oh, my dad this, my dad doesn't do this, he's an old man, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then you get to this third stage, and that third stage is where you start to humanize your father, and you realize, oh, you know what, yeah, he didn't have it all figured out, but I could see that he tried. And I just want to tell you, he's trying. Like, he's here, he's investing in you guys, he wants to be part of your lives. And so he's admitted things that he's done, and you guys have acknowledged it, right? I'm sure you've acknowledged it, even if it's inside. But start to get to that humanization phase a little sooner, as early as you can, and know that we all mess up, and you guys are going to mess up too as you grow older. But we're out here trying, we're out here doing the best we can, and spend time, like take these moments to really be engaged with him. That's what I'd say to you and the boys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Last one, it better be a good one. No pressure here.
No pressure. I'm Sean. Follow up to the marriage question. How do you bridge the gap when you and your wife have different philosophies on the hierarchy, spouse and then parents?
You guys ever gone through a process of identifying roles?
No.
We'll definitely start there.
Okay.
My wife and I, can you describe maybe your situation just a little bit more?
Sure. Married 10 years, 3 kids, 9, and then twin 6-year boys. So we're in it. For several years, she's been questioning why we're even together.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that word?
She's been questioning, like, why did we even get married? Our friendship or what that bond level was. Therapy speak, there's probably some trauma bonding just when we came together. But I brought this up several times. I'm like, hey, I want to reboot. This isn't working. Here's what I believe. And she very vehemently denies, like, no, that's not what I believe. And I don't know how to bridge that gap.
Hey, just real quick on the reboot thing, you don't get to do that.
I mean, rebuild a new dynamic.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, sometimes us as men feel like we just want to start over. You don't get to. It's not to start the computer, but you can rewrite the code, right? I think that's what you're talking about. So understand that it's, and I want to hear that. I just wanted to bring attention to that for anybody who thinks, oh well, let's just have a fresh slate. How's that going to work? She remembers everything that you've done over the past 10 years, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and mostly the bad and the ugly. And you need to rewrite that with new memories, new scripts, right? New prompts. And it takes time. That's what I was saying the other day. It's like, wow, what's your problem? I've been good for a week. Yeah, well, it's not going to overdo 10 years. It takes a little bit longer to override that.
You guys been together for 10 years? Okay. By the way, thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. Think back, when was the last time that it felt like you and your wife were a couple, that you were lovers, that you were dating, that you were courting her, pursuing her, creating polarity, tension? That's my son calling Ryan. I didn't know he had it. Oh yeah, he does have your number. When was the last time?
It's been a while.
What's a while?
Probably a couple of years at least.
A couple years, okay. Is she resistant to you pursuing, like, hey, let's go out on a date on Friday? What would she say?
It never goes well.
Okay, tell me about that.
From my perspective, it seems like she tries to sabotage it, like use that as the opportunity to bring up 6 or 8 months worth of grief. And so, to my detriment, I've stopped trying, because what I get out of it, or there's no, I lost the word, but it just doesn't go well. It actually makes things worse. So then we just pour into the kids more. That's probably the one thing we are doing well. Logistics, like from Ryan's thing yesterday, so. But yeah.
Again, thank you for being so transparent. This is definitely a deep conversation for sure. When was the last time you guys had consistent daily connection, even if it was just for 10 minutes? And I'm not talking about, hey, we're taking this kid here, we're going to our store there, this bill is paid. Like, where you're actually like, hey, what was something that happened to you today that was really good? What was the best part of your day? What was something that was so challenging today? Tell me about it. Where you're actually connecting as a couple.
I can't remember.
Okay. So I would love to have a deeper conversation with you, because this was our story. My wife and I, known each other 30 years, married for 23. The reps in a marriage is really no different than the reps in the gym. We don't go and train biceps once a year and they're going to grow, right? But we do that in our relationships. And it's actually not just in our marriage, it's with our kids too. Like, we'll go weeks, months without connecting with them. Same thing with friendships. This is why 70% of men report being lonely. We don't have those deep relationships. Stephen Mansfield calls it rusty relationships, where they're really shallow. But having the opportunity to get deep, the one thing that I would just caution you, and by the way, I truly believe, I've been doing marriage coaching now for 9 years, and that is the one thing that I can hang my hat on, that I can do well. But I've seen situations, John Bornheim back there, who completely turned his situation around, legally divorced, moved out, 2 separate homes, and now is back together. That I think there can be recovery in just about any situation, even if it feels incredibly bleak. The message that, and again, I want to talk to you offline, but the message that I have, and I have to remind myself this. I say this to guys, but I have to remind myself this, is that without that consistency, without that daily connection, without that it's a non-negotiable every Friday, no matter what is going on, we are going to have a date. Right? We're going to have time. Because without that rep, we start to do that thing where we spin in different orbits. And when we spin in different orbits, we each start telling a story about the other person that may or may not be true. And the thing that we always say in the Dad Edge is resentment is a lot like the polyp that goes undetected because we don't get the colonoscopy, right? And Peter Attia said this in his book, that not every polyp is a cancer, but every cancer starts as a polyp. So if we neglect those things and we're not doing those reps, what happens is that resentment, unfortunately, it will metastasize. And it could be the end of a relationship. But there's several resources out there. You guys can do couples therapy. I know Mark Carey, who's in the audience, he hosts marriage retreats. I would highly encourage you to get some outside help on this. And the one thing that I would absolutely caution you on is, if you're going to get outside help, it has to be the right fit for both of you. Because the one thing that can be kryptonite to a man or a woman is if that therapist takes the side of the other and sabotages the other. We've heard that too. So a therapist is just like, kind of like dating, you gotta go find the right one. But again, I know that probably wasn't as deep of an answer as you probably needed, which is why I just would love to have the opportunity to talk to you. Sure.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we appreciate it. Great questions. And obviously, with these types of questions, keep the conversations rolling. We've got a lot of activities planned for this evening and planned for tomorrow morning. So, and you might have heard a question where you think, man, I got a perspective on that. Good. Go pull that guy aside and tell him, like, hey, I was thinking about that question you brought up, and I had something similar going on in my life, and here's what I did, or here's a solution I came across, and use this as fodder for some of the conversations you guys can have the rest of the evening and into tomorrow morning. Appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.